Hello and welcome to The Leading Question. I'm your host, Steve Wigreiser. Today we're going to talk about a nonprofit in the city of Philadelphia called Urban Navigation. Now, when I think about those words, urban, I'm thinking about the inner city, I'm thinking about high population density, and when I think about navigation, I think about a way to get from point A to point B. But this group is a group that puts it all together in order to address a very significant societal problem, a problem in the city at large, a problem in the neighborhoods, and that is youth urban violence. Hameen Diggins here to talk a little bit about urban navigation.
So I'm from West Philadelphia, but I reside in Delaware County now.
Okay.
So went to school in West Philadelphia, grew up.
West Philly High?
No, that's a bad word. I went to Overbrook High.
Oh, okay.
Went to Overbrook High.
Famous one-time high school of Wilt Chamberlain and
many other, and the legends continue.
And,
I also attended Community High, which is in North Philadelphia at a point. Came up through the foster care system, group homes. And now currently I am a nurse as well as an entrepreneur, married with 5 wonderful kids.
5?
Yep, 5 boys.
Right.
Everybody's grown now, so I get a little bit of freedom.
Okay. So as a father, I would imagine that brings some additional perspective to this issue of violence and gun violence in particular. How does that influence your thinking?
Number one, having 5 boys, I understood the ups and downs of what they went through. Coming from a background of being a foster child in group homes, I understood that the definition of home for everybody was different. Don and I, we understood that. And we understood that depending on what goes on in your home and so forth, that is sometimes based on the type of education that you will get. Me being a father around, I was able to educate my kids on a lot of different levels, really based off of my pain and not my accomplishments, but letting them know that in life you will stumble. One of the things Don and I say that when you walk into a room, you must identify the exits. So if you know where all the exits are, that means if anything happens, you're not running towards the same exit as everybody else and beginning to stumble, so forth. You know where the next exit is, but once you find that exit, you leave a crack in there.
So is there an exit strategy for this culture of gun violence?
Yes. The exit strategy, education. We all say that education is the key to succeed in life, but the thing is, the schools teach ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Urban navigation, we teach life. That's the one education also that is needed. The exit becomes when you understand the next step, when you understand and deal with certain traumas in your life, when you understand a different perspective, which is what we bring to the table. When you give these kids a different perspective, when you allow them to talk instead of giving them the explanation that we think is wrong. Right. When they talk, then we know how to help them because they can say, well, that's not my problem. My mom and dad is in the house. When I step outside of that house, it's about clout. I want to be the biggest man out here. That's different than me giving them an excuse. Some people blame it on low social economical status, but that's not always it. Sometimes it's as simple as clout. We talked to a young man and that's what he said. He said it's clout. But for somebody else, it becomes a little bit different because in their home, there may be some type of substance abuse. There may be something else going on. The pandemic kind of put everybody trapped in to the house and they had to face a lot of things.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse. But what did a lot of our youth have to face? What was in that house that we don't know about? What if school was the outlet? What if the basketball court coming outside was an outlet, but now they had to face something that none of us know about?
So this sounds multifactorial. It sounds like there is no one-size-fits-all solution for this. Everybody's household is different. For richer or for poorer, it doesn't necessarily translate into a violent young person.
No.
Without making any assumptions, if you came up in the foster care system, you made the choice, or you were shown the option of not leading a violent life.
Right.
And so that's proof right there that economic status does not necessarily determine how you're going to be or what you're going to be or how you're going to conduct yourself.
Right. Don and I often tell people that at the end of the day, we have to be very careful on coming up with using the handbook that worked for us in our era. We have to update the handbook because the generation is different. They have more access than we ever had. They got access to social media. They have access to a lot. There's a lot more political things where everybody's extra sensitive. You got to be careful what you say, how you say it. So it's different when we update the handbook and learn how to meet them where they're at, deal with them from that point of view, then we can go ahead and begin to help them change their perspective. We can talk to them about misguided anger. We can talk to them about acting on pure emotions and the domino effect. Sometimes there's a tunnel vision. You're upset with somebody, so I'm going right after this person. Don said earlier about a bystander. Right. You may have, in your mind, you may have only wanted to go after one particular target, but that domino effect is, okay, did they have a child? What about the mom?
Right.
What about, and nobody's thinking about that because the emotional decision in that moment, caused them not to think it thoroughly. But then who do they go to?
Well, there's no question we're all victims. I mean, this affects everyone, but the trigger is always going to be there. You can't, and this is where the definition of urban becomes important because we're all packed together, more or less, in a confined area, right? And whether we mean it or not, we're going to bump into each other. If we are having conversation, people are going to misinterpret conversation. One of the greatest problems, in my opinion, with the internet is that words can be taken out of context and interpreted any which way you want, depending upon how you're feeling. So when we get an email, for example,
right,
that rubs us the wrong way, sometimes we fire off a response, and then luckily, and I'll make this personal, luckily for me, I don't send it right then. And I step away from the computer, sometimes for an entire day, and I come back to it, and I go, I don't think I'm going to send that. I'm going to be the better person. I'm going to rise above that. But somehow I know to do that.
Well, see, whether that's from experience or whether that's from that gut feeling to second guess, with a lot of our youth culture, they don't have that. This is where the education come in. You're responsible for the knowledge that is given to you, not for what you don't know sometimes. You may have to deal with the consequences of what you don't know.
Right.
But when somebody tells you, Don and I often say that we would never want to see any of our youth in the courtroom saying, well, no one told me. Because we sit up there and said, no, Urban Navigation did tell you. We sat you down. We explained to you. Because this is what we do. We tell them the consequences of their actions. One of the exercises we do is that we go into like a pain of forgiveness. So we talk to them and say, okay, who you mad at? And I take a book bag. I put it on the kid's back. I get them to volunteer. Give me all of your problems. Well, I'm mad at this, and I'm mad at my mom. I'm mad at my friend. And we put something in that book bag. And then the more problems, we put something else. Okay, now try to move. It's heavy. They can't. They're moving slowly. But then I say, okay, so give you a different perspective. What if you begin to forgive a little bit? What if you begin to let certain situations go because it's beyond your control? What if it's not worth it? What if you forget about survivor's remorse? You're trying to move on in life, but your friends are calling you sellouts and you think you're better than me now and so forth. What if you begin to let those things go? And we slowly take things out of the book bag. And then I say to that kid, move. They begin to move, but it's lighter. Because all these things that were weighing them down in life that they thought that no one sees me, no one cares, it becomes a little bit different because now they can move with a lot more freedom and so forth, but it gives them a different perspective that all of that pain and stress and trauma you were carrying around, it was heavy. We often tell people, we hand them a mirror. So listen, I want everybody to look because I found the person that was holding you back. I found them and we're going to get them together. And when they look in the mirror, you know who they see?
Themselves.
And that gives them a different perspective because they've been looking for a ghost all this time. Nobody won't give me a job. Nobody cares about, I can't. But we can, together. We create a community. One thing that gave me a different perspective growing up as a young man was a village. It was a gym teacher. It was a friend. It was somebody that would say something, people used to have these sayings back in the day. So you mean to tell me if he jumped off the roof, you're going to jump off the roof too?
I heard that.
Those were the most profound words in the world because it became deep all of a sudden like, wow, no, I'm not. Or somebody looked at you and said, you know what? You know better. And it would almost scare you like, you're right. But you begin to think because everybody played their part. So many people are so divided now. They look at the young people. I don't want to have anything to do with them. That culture is lost and they give up. But the thing about it is we weren't born grown. We, at one point in our lives, were subjected to flaws. We still are, but we were young. And somebody didn't like what I did. I had a professor tell me one time, he said, listen, one generation is going to sit up there and they're going to stick bananas up their nose. And somebody going to say, what are you doing? The next generation may wear a shoe on their head. Well, wasn't a banana up your nose good enough for you? Why you got a shoe on your head? Each generation is going to think that their generation and what they did was good enough. So why are you doing that? Because they refuse to understand that the generations, they evolve. This is not us. There are more things coming out, which also means more pressure, more pain. And this is what we get into when we begin to teach them, because some of these kids just want to be seen. That little kid riding that bicycle and he goes right in front of your car and he swerves. He wants you to see him. Right. I mean, you may say, oh, that's a nuisance. But he wants to be seen because he waits until you look and then he wheelies the bike. And he's looking at you and whatever. It's dangerous. But the thing about it is we understood that young man. Do you know that that is a talent? Do you know that what if I gave you a different perspective? What if I gave you somewhere else to ride that bike? And you were able to show people just how talented you are. I often tell people the greatest award that I've ever got when attending school, it was not, the straight A awards or you got noticed because you were the kid being bad. It was the most improved. That meant the world because you see the kid that was doing everything wrong and you see the kid that's all the way at the top. What about that kid at that crossroad? What about walking up to that kid? I knew you can do it. Because he's at that road where he can either go below or he can go above. But it depends on what we say in that moment. We have a lot of gun violence, so we have to address that. Why can one community get educated on gun violence, but another community can't? What are we holding secrets? So one of the things Don and I do is we get information. I tell people that I'm one of the greatest thieves out here because I steal knowledge. Because it's priceless. I will never auction off any knowledge that I have. It's priceless, but I'm not stingy with it. We take that knowledge back to the young people and say, did you know? Most children don't know that, listen, if you use that gun the right way, do you know that you can probably get a scholarship? Because there's competitive shooting? Well, what's that? No one told me. I just did. That's what we do. We bring them knowledge. We give them conflict resolution. We give them a different way to look at things, not through our success, but through our pain, because we understood that once upon a time we tripped, we fell, but somebody stood there and lifted us up. Somebody gave us their hand. Somebody said, young man, I see you. You're the most improved. Keep going. That's what we do. We often say that we're not qualified to take the guns out of these kids' hands, but we're qualified to give them a reason not to shoot. They already have the guns. You can march. You can say, hey, put the guns down, but they already have them. Gun buyback program. We just got 1,500 guns off the street. You just got their old guns because they upgraded. Right. But you did pay for lunch. I'm pretty sure they're happy for that. But what about giving them a reason not to shoot that gun? Because if I give you a reason, that's when you begin to put it down. I never looked at it like that.
It sounds like we need to give our kids some acknowledgement. We need to get everybody on the same page. You know, you alluded to the village concept. I'm thinking of Hillary Clinton's line, it takes a village. But it sounds like it really does, because if we get educators, and we get pastors, and we get family members, and we get the business community, everyone acknowledging the issues and acknowledging people.
And acknowledging that they have to update the manual. It doesn't, whatever worked for you back in the 60s, 70s, and so it's not working now. And that's why the violence is getting more out of control, because you're sitting there and you need another method. You have to sit up there and say, you know what, this manual, I can't put this together with an old manual because there's things missing. They done added things. It's improved. It's better. When you update the manual and you got the correct manual, what you put together becomes correct.
I mean, it's not going to work. The old manual is not going to work today.
Yeah.
I think that message is pretty clear. Obviously, there's a lot of time and effort and expense involved in this. If our viewers would like to support this organization, I know I do, how could they go about doing that?
One of the things that they can do is they can go to our website. They can email us also to find out more information about the programs. They can find us on Facebook. We're down at the Billy Penn Studios in room 210.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today.
We appreciate you.
And it was very interesting. It was eye-opening, and I think you're going to get a lot of support from our viewers. And I hope to have you back again in the near future and see how we're doing. And it was really nice to have this conversation. And to our viewers, remember, keep asking questions, stay informed, and stay safe. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of The Leading Question.